What if everything you were taught about ancient civilization was incomplete? What if one of the world's most advanced ancient societies did not rise in Europe, did not emerge from the Mediterranean, and did not vanish into the Atlantic Ocean, but instead existed right here in Africa? For centuries, scholars have searched for Atlantis, Plato's legendary lost civilization, said to be powerful, advanced, and ultimately destroyed by catastrophe. But what if Atlantis was never a single place? What if its echoes survived, in myth, in art, in memory, hidden in plain sight? Today, we journey into the heart of West Africa, into a city wrapped in legend, spirituality, and astonishing craftsmanship. A city some believe represents Africa's own lost golden age. This is the mystery of Ile-Ife. To understand Ife, we must first understand what it means. In the Yoruba language, Ile-Ife translates as the place of expansion, the home from which the world spread outward. This is not a poetic nickname. It is a cosmological statement. According to Yoruba belief, this land is not simply ancient, it is primordial. Before nations, before borders, before history itself had a name. The Yoruba say the world began here. In the beginning, there was only sky above and endless water below. Then Olodumare, the supreme creator, looked down upon the formless earth and sent divine beings, the Orisha, from the heavens to shape reality. Among them was Obatala, the sculptor of existence, who descended with sacred clay and molded the first humans by hand, giving them form, limbs, and breath. But creation was not complete. Then came Oduduwa, the one who descended with a chain from the sky, bearing sand, a rooster, and authority. He poured the sand upon the waters. The rooster scattered it. Land emerged, and order followed. From Oduduwa came kingship. From kingship came law. From law came civilization. And the place where his feet touched the earth became Ile-Ife. In Yoruba tradition, this is not myth in the distant sense. It is history remembered differently. Ile-Ife is not symbolic, not metaphorical, not imaginary. It is literal, sacred ground, the spiritual center of existence, the axis between heaven and earth. And unlike many ancient holy cities, Ife was never lost to time. It was never buried by sand, never erased by conquest, never reduced to ruins. People still wake up there, still pray there, still walk the same paths their ancestors walked 1,000 years ago. The world did not move on from Ile-Ife. It expanded from it. When the earth of Ile-Ife was disturbed, history itself was unsettled. In the early 20th century, as workers dug foundations and cleared land, the ground refused to keep its secrets. First one emerged, then another. Something impossible was coming to light. Faces not crude masks, not abstract symbols, but perfectly breathtakingly human. Terracotta heads first, their features calm, balanced, and imbued with an inner life. Then unearthed from the sacred soil came the bronzes, cast with a lost wax technique so refined, with metal walls so thin, they seemed to defy every colonial assumption about Africa's technological past. When the German ethnologist Leo Frobenius first saw them in 1910, he was stunned into disbelief. These were not primitive artifacts. They were naturalistic portraits, portraits of composure, with a symmetry and anatomical accuracy that rivaled the masters of the Italian Renaissance. The colonial world could not comprehend it. The reaction was a frantic search for an external explanation. Frobenius himself declared he had found the lost Atlantis. Others claimed the works must be Greek, brought to Africa by some forgotten expedition. Some said Roman. Anything, any explanation at all, was preferable to the truth staring them in the face. But the truth was unavoidable. The chemical composition of the metal, the style of the regalia, the scarification marks etched into the skin, these were Yoruba. These were Ife. They were undeniably magnificently African. The faces tell stories not of gods, but of rulers, of Unis, divine kings, whose portraits were meant to preserve their essence for eternity. Rulers with serene authority, priests marked by sacred lines of knowledge, nobles bearing the quiet confidence of power. Each face is unique, a specific person remembered. Their eyes gaze forward, not in fear, but in command. Lips rest in controlled stillness, suggesting a world of thought held within. These were not just sculptures. They were vessels for the spirit, created to ensure continuity between a departed king and his successor. And behind every face was a technology that was practically a form of alchemy, the lost wax casting technique, a process so complex it courts failure at every step. First a perfect detailed sculpture in beeswax, then a careful casing in layers of fine clay, then the trial of fire, hot enough to melt the wax away, leaving a perfect hollow mold. Into this fragile vessel, molten metal is poured, a precise alloy of copper and other elements, heated to the exact temperature needed to flow into every crevice. A single miscalculation, a single air bubble, and the entire work is lost. This was not chance. This was institutional mastery, the fingerprint of a civilization that had perfected the art of breathing life into metal. While much of medieval Europe was mired in the instability of feudal warfare and recovering from the Black Death, Ile-Ife was building a society of extraordinary stability and refinement. It wasn't just creating art, it was engineering a metropolis. Archaeologists discovered that vast areas of the city, courtyards, altars and paths, were paved with intricate mosaics made from broken pottery, laid on their edges to create durable, patterned surfaces. This wasn't just decorative. It was a massive public works project, evidence of sophisticated urban planning and a leadership capable of organizing immense labor. The art itself reveals even more. The famous bronze and terracotta heads are only part of the story. Full-figure sculptures show kings in full regalia, their bodies depicted with the same naturalism as their faces. Beaded crowns and intricate necklaces are rendered with symbolic precision, each element a statement of authority, cosmic order, and divine kingship. This was political language made visible. These works were not created in a vacuum. They demanded immense resources, the kind that only a powerful, connected civilization could command. And Ile-Ife was a nexus. The source of its materials tells the story of its reach. The copper, essential for the bronze casting, may have been carried across the vast Sahara, a journey of months through punishing desert, linking Ile-Ife to the great trade networks of the north. The gold, ivory and kola nuts flowed in from the deep forests. In return, Ile-Ife's own crafts, its glass beads and refined goods, traveled outward. Ile-Ife was not a forgotten inland city. It was a cosmopolitan hub, a center of exchange, not just for materials, but for ideas, beliefs, and technologies. Merchants from distant lands passed through its gates. Artisans honed their craft in royal workshops. Priests interpreted the universe from its sacred groves. And the Uni ruled over it all, not just as a king, but as the living axis between heaven and earth. This is what advanced civilizations do. They connect, they absorb, they refine, and they create a stable cosmos for their people. Ile-Ife did not merely exist in history. It shaped it, projecting a culture of order and beauty. And yet, for all its brilliance, the questions deepen. What kind of society invests its soul so completely in permanence? How did this specific mastery arise so early and so fully formed? And why, after centuries of casting its light across West Africa, did its golden age seem to conclude? To answer that, we must look beyond what rose from the earth and toward what may have been willingly given away. This is where the mystery deepens into something else. Not just a question of history, but of memory itself. Across all cultures, across all time, great civilizations remember their own origins not as a dry list of dates and documents, but as grand, sweeping stories, as epics as myths. The Greek philosopher Plato wrote of Atlantis. He described a civilization that was impossibly perfect. Powerful, certainly, but also highly organized. Technologically advanced beyond its peers, and above all spiritually significant. A society that existed as the very center of its own world, a sun around which all others orbited. And then it diminished. The story isn't one of a simple military defeat. It is a tale of being undone by a shift in cosmic favor, by a cataclysm, by time itself, by forces beyond human control. The Ile-Ife was not swallowed by the ocean. There is no physical evidence of a city dragged beneath the waves by divine wrath, but its full, concentrated greatness did fade. It experienced its own kind of cataclysm, a slow, quiet unraveling. The political authority that was once held in the hands of a single divine Uni began to shift outward like a receding tide. The centralized power dispersed, becoming a legacy shared across new rising Yoruba kingdoms, the mighty Oyo Empire, the commercial power of Ijebu, the kingdoms of Ekiti and Ondo. What had once been a single, brilliant flame became many smaller, vital lights scattered across the land. The source had given its fire away, and what remained behind in the sacred city of Ile-Ife were fragments. Art preserved in the patient, forgiving earth, buried like seeds waiting for a future season to bloom. Ritual preserved in the precise, repeated gestures of practice, movements that held the shape of lost beliefs. And oral memory, preserved in the telling of stories, polished smooth and luminous by 1,000 years of repetition. And it is here, in this space between what was and what is remembered, that myth and history begin to truly overlap. We must ask the question, could the Yoruba stories of divine beings, of gods descending from the sky on a golden chain, be symbolic memories of ancient foundational elites? Kings, priests, or culture bringers whose knowledge and authority seemed so complete, so otherworldly, that to later generations they could only have been divine. Could the very creation myths themselves, stories of the world beginning at Ile-Ife, encode a real historical time when this city was not merely one power among many, but the undisputed spiritual and cultural center of an entire region? The place where their world was, quite literally, made. This is not proof. History, as a discipline, demands hard evidence. But history also listens for patterns, for resonances, and patterns leave echoes. Echoes in the serene, confident gaze of a bronze king. Echoes in the complex rhythms of a sacred drum. Echoes in the stories repeated by a grandmother to her grandchild, words that have been spoken for over 1,000 years. The legend of Atlantis may be a cautionary tale from the West, a story of hubris and loss. But Ile-Ife may be something else entirely, not a lost city beneath the sea, but a civilization whose memory was kept alive because writing was not its primary archive. Its memory lives on, not etched onto cold stone tablets, but carried in the warm breath of human voices. And those voices have never ever fallen silent. And here we arrive at the most astonishing truth of all. A truth that is not buried in the distant past, but is alive, breathing, and right under our feet. Most of ancient Ile-Ife has never been uncovered. Not because it was lost to time or destroyed by conquest, but because it is still occupied. The vibrant, modern city of Ile-Ife stands directly, precisely, on top of its ancient foundations. It is a living metropolis built upon its own ghost, layer upon layer, century upon century, a geological telling of time, where the strata are not rock and sediment but human lives. Beneath today's homes, with their satellite dishes and concrete walls, lie the mud-brick foundations of older homes. Beneath the paved roads, humming with the sound of motorcycles, lie the ancient, intricate mosaic paths. Beneath the clamor of the bustling Oja Titun market, where merchants trade goods from across the world, lie the forgotten royal courtyards where kings once walked and dispensed justice. This is not a ruin like Pompeii frozen in ash. It is not an abandoned citadel like Machu Picchu, silent on a mountaintop. This is a continuum, a city that never died and so never became a relic. Archaeologists, using ground-penetrating radar and studying the city's contours, already know what lies below. They see the faint outlines of massive earthworks. They can trace the deep defensive walls and moats that once protected the city. They have mapped the sacred groves, aligned with ancient ritual calendars that are still referenced today. They see the evidence of intentional urban design on a breathtaking scale. But excavation is slow, painstakingly careful, and profoundly difficult because this is a living city. People pray here, in mosques and churches built near groves, where their ancestors prayed to the Orishas. They trade here, they raise families here. Their roots are not just in the soil, but in the memory the soil holds. You cannot simply dig through someone's home, their history, to reach an older history. The past must be treated with the same respect as the present. And so the earth, out of deference to the living, keeps its secrets. And we walk above them every single day, largely unaware of the universe, sleeping just inches beneath our feet. What else lies beneath that sacred ground? The full expanse of royal palaces still unexposed. The fiery heart of the workshops, where alchemical artisans once cast molten bronze and shaped divine clay. The inner sanctums of shrines where rituals were performed that linked this world to the next. And perhaps the greatest treasures of all, more masterpieces. Faces of kings, queens, and nobles, cast in bronze and terracotta, still waiting in the patient darkness to see the sun again. History has not finished speaking from this place. It is only buried, it is resting. And one day, when the time is right, when the living and the dead are ready, the earth will be ready to give up its stories. And on that day, Ile-Ife will once again change how the world understands Africa's past. Not as myth, not as mystery, but as memory made visible. Now, as we approach the conclusion of this journey, we must anchor ourselves in a crucial, often uncomfortable truth. History, in its purest form, demands unwavering honesty. Mainstream archaeology, with its rigorous methodology and commitment to tangible evidence, does not support the claim that Ile-Ife is Atlantis in a literal geographical sense. There is no physical evidence of a city the size of Ile-Ife sinking beneath the sea. The archaeological timelines do not align cleanly with Plato's ancient account, separated as they are by vast oceans and millennia. Furthermore, Plato's original account of Atlantis itself is widely debated among scholars, often considered allegorical, perhaps a vehicle for political philosophy, or even a moral warning about hubris, rather than a factual historical record. And that, in the pursuit of truth, matters. Because truth, unvarnished and unromanticized, matters most of all. But here is the deeper truth, the one that, for far too long, has remained unspoken, overshadowed by the very comparisons we seek to dismantle. Ile-Ife does not need Atlantis. It does not need any external myth or legendary comparison to validate its profound, inherent, and utterly unique, extraordinary nature. The very existence of this comparison, the persistent urge to link Ife with a European myth of lost grandeur, exists not because Ife lacks greatness, but because the world, particularly the Western world, has historically struggled to accept that African civilizations achieved such remarkable complexity, such sophisticated social structures, and such brilliant artistry entirely independently. For centuries, any significant African achievement was systematically explained away. It was attributed to outsiders, Phoenicians, Egyptians, Arabs. It was reassigned to lost foreigners, often from Europe. It was filtered through a pervasive colonial lens that insisted on myths making Europe the sole origin point of all progress, all innovation, all high culture. When scholars could no longer deny the astonishing realism and technical mastery of Ife's bronze and terracotta sculptures, they didn't embrace it as African genius. Instead, they desperately searched for excuses. They posited Greek hands shaping the clay. They invented Roman influence as the catalyst. They concocted tales of a vanished European colony, a lost race, anything except the simple, powerful truth of African genius blooming in its own right. But the evidence, unearthed and undeniable, stands firm. Ife was a golden age, luminous and self-generated. It was not borrowed from distant lands. It was not an accidental flicker in the historical darkness. It was not derivative of any other culture. Its monumental achievements emerged organically from deep African systems of knowledge, from profound African political thought, from rich African spirituality, and from an unparalleled African artistry that was both indigenous and innovative. Ile-Ife must be understood on its own terms, on African terms. Once we shed the need, once we finally remove the intellectual burden to compare African greatness to external myths, once we allow it to simply be, Ile-Ife becomes something even more profound, even more powerful. A civilization that does not ask to be validated by Europe, it simply exists. A testament to human creativity, ingenuity and spirit, standing alone in its magnificent truth. The story of Ile-Ife, remarkably, does not end with a mere fading of power or a simple shifting of influence. Instead, it transforms, it evolves. What did not vanish, what could not be extinguished, was its profound and enduring legacy. From Ife, a radiating authority spread outward, like ripples from a stone cast into a still pond, to the magnificent kingdom of Benin, for instance, where the artistic traditions and the very concept of sacred kingship flourished, evolving into the famed Benin bronzes. These masterpieces, celebrated globally, still echo Ife's naturalism, its unparalleled technical mastery in metalwork, and the deeply rooted belief in a divine king. The artistic lineage is undeniable, a clear thread connecting these two great centers of power and art. To the powerful Oyo Empire, a formidable political and military force, whose kings consciously built their legitimacy and authority upon the spiritual and ancestral foundation that traced its origins directly back to Ile-Ife. The spiritual capital remained Ife, even as the political might resided elsewhere. Across the entire vast expanse of Yoruba land, new kingdoms rose and asserted their dominance. But their newly crowned kings did not claim authority from conquest alone. That was never enough. They claimed it fundamentally from Ile-Ife. Lineage mattered above all else. Origins mattered deeply. To rule, to govern, to lead was to be directly connected, by blood, by spirit, by tradition, to the sacred place where the world, and indeed kingship itself, began. Artistically, the spirit of Ife never truly disappeared. Its groundbreaking realism, its uncanny ability to capture the human form with such emotional depth, lived on. Its intricate symbolism endured, woven into the very fabric of later artistic expressions. Its profound spiritual language remained intact, expressed through a rich array of masks, sculptures, and ritual objects. Each of these carried fragments of Ife's original transformative vision, a powerful ancient belief that art was never merely decoration, but a vital, living bridge between the seen world of humans and the unseen realm of the divine. And even today, in the 21st century, Ile-Ife is not a ruin waiting to be unearthed. It is not a museum frozen in some distant, forgotten time. It is a living, breathing, bustling city. People walk its ancient streets, often unaware that directly beneath their feet lies a dense, vibrant tapestry of centuries of history, generation upon generation. Festivals still follow ancient calendars, their rhythms echoing rituals performed 1,000 years ago. Sacred ceremonies still mark cosmic order, performed by spiritual leaders whose lineage stretches back to the dawn of time. And the Uni of Ife still reigns, not just as a monarch, but as a potent living symbol of unity, a keeper of memory, and a vital link to the continuity of a truly ancient civilization. Ife is a profound place where the past is not past at all. It breathes within the very air of the city. It speaks through its traditions and its people. It waits patiently for those who are ready to listen. A living memory, a living city, a living mystery, and perhaps that after all our searching and questioning is the greatest truth of all. Some civilizations are not lost because they were never meant to disappear. They were meant, from their very inception, to be remembered, to live on eternally in the hearts and minds of their descendants. History, fundamentally, shapes identity. It is the narrative framework through which people understand themselves, their origins, their capabilities, their place in the world, and, crucially, how they are perceived by others. For far too long, The rich, complex tapestry of African history was systematically minimized, fragmented into mere footnotes, or worse, erased entirely from dominant global narratives. Powerful, sophisticated civilizations were often dismissed and reduced to derogatory labels, like tribes. Genuine innovation was conveniently explained away as mere coincidence or external influence. Any clear sign of greatness was attributed to external forces, conveniently borrowed or simply accidental rather than indigenous. Ile-Ife, however, stands as an undeniable force that profoundly challenges that distorted story. It reminds us with potent clarity that Africa was never passively waiting to be discovered or civilized. Africa was actively creating. It was meticulously organizing complex societies. It was tirelessly innovating across various fields, from metallurgy to urban design. It was developing intricate systems of governance that ensured stability and progress. It was producing art of breathtaking realism and profound spiritual depth. It was sustaining sophisticated spiritual philosophies that connected humanity directly to the cosmos, understanding the interconnectedness of all life. All of this, long before the modern world ever bothered to acknowledge, let alone appreciate, its existence. This renewed understanding is not about childishly competing with a European myth like Atlantis. It is certainly not about simply replacing one myth with another, trading one set of fictions for another. No, this is about something far more vital. It is about restoring true balance to the historical record. It is about recognizing unequivocally that human achievement, in its most brilliant and enduring forms, has never belonged exclusively to one continent, one culture, or one people. It stands as irrefutable proof that Africa has always been a central, active contributor to the grand narrative of human civilization. Not a passive bystander, but a primary architect of human progress. So then, after this journey, this exploration of myth and memory, of history and art, is Ile-Ife Africa's Atlantis? Perhaps in a symbolic sense it is, but not as a sunken continent, a lost fantasy swallowed by the sea and forgotten. Rather, it is something far more powerful, far more real. It is a genuine civilization, built by real people, with real knowledge, and wielding profound, measurable influence that resonated across a continent for centuries. It represents a sacred origin, a foundational epoch where spirituality, politics, and art were not separate disciplines, but intricately woven into a single cohesive worldview that governed life itself. It is a masterpiece of human achievement, not merely imagined in the realms of myth, but meticulously shaped in clay, exquisitely cast in bronze, and diligently preserved, not just in artifacts, but in the living memory of its descendants. Ile-Ife is still standing, still breathing, still speaking through its art, its traditions, its living culture. It is waiting, not to be further mythologized or romanticized, but to be fully understood, revered for its indigenous brilliance. And perhaps this enduring presence, this vibrant continuation of an ancient past into the present, is the greatest mystery of all. Some civilizations, you see, are not lost simply because they were never meant to disappear. They were meant, from their very inception, to be remembered, to inspire, and to continue to shape the world. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of African history. If you found this exploration as fascinating and eye-opening as we did, please consider liking this video, sharing your insights in the comments below, and subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into the untold stories of our world. Your support truly helps us bring these vital narratives to light. See you next time.